The bridal suite was filled with laughter, but it wasn't mine. My sister, radiant in entitlement, sneered as my bank account flashed zero her luxury. My sacrifice, every dress, every detail paid for with money I had saved for my own life-changing surgery. I stood there, steamer in hand, feeling the weight of years spent scrimping and saving vanish in an instant. Have you ever been treated like a walking ATM by the people who should love you most? Let me tell you what happened next. 6 months earlier, I had been sitting in a specialist's office in downtown Seattle, staring at an invoice that made my stomach knot. $60,000. That was the price to fix a chronic pain condition that had made every step feel like walking on shards of glass for the past 3 years. It wasn't life-threatening, but it had stolen my freedom, my ability to live without thinking about the next flare of agony. I had spent 5 years building up that fund carefully, relentlessly. Every spare dollar went into a high-yield savings account labeled Simply Health Fund. My life as a 28-year-old risk auditor was all about precision calculation and sacrifice. I drove a 10-year-old sedan that rattled past 40 miles per hour. I skipped vacations I longed for, and dinners were often instant noodles eaten quietly at my kitchen counter. Everything was an investment toward the day I could finally breathe without pain. When the doctor handed me the surgery schedule, it felt like victory. Relief washed over me. Freedom finally within reach. Then the phone rang. It was my father, Kenneth. He wasn't just upset. He was hyperventilating the kind of panic that made my chest tighten. He spoke of legal trouble loan sharks, a business deal gone wrong, and federal prison looming if he didn't scrape together $60,000 by week's end. His voice shook. His pleas were raw. I sat in my car outside the clinic, hand hovering over my phone, the numbers glaring back at me. My logical auditor mind screamed the figures didn't add up. Why 60,000 exactly? Why not any other number? Yet buried beneath the spreadsheets and probability charts, my daughter brain, the part trained for empathy, conditioned to rescue, overrode reason. I told myself money could always be earned again. A father could not. With a trembling finger, I transferred every cent from my health fund to his account. I called the office to cancel my surgery and walked back to my life of instant noodles, telling myself I had done the right thing, that I had saved my family. Every step, every sacrifice, every frugal choice had led to this moment of surrender, a choice that seemed both inevitable and utterly devastating. And yet, as I sat in that quiet, I couldn't shake the uneasy weight of giving up my hard-earned freedom for the illusion of family loyalty, feeling the first cracks of doubt creep into my carefully audited life. 2 days after wiring the money, I drove to my parents' house with a mix of worry and exhaustion, expecting to find my father drained, vulnerable, and in desperate need of help. The place was empty, unnervingly quiet, like a stage after the final curtain. My eyes fell on the kitchen counter where a single piece of heavy cream-colored cardstock lay buried under a stack of junk mail. I picked it up slowly, a sense of unease settling in my stomach. It wasn't a court summons. It wasn't any legal notice. It was a receipt, a non-refundable deposit for a private island resort, a diamond package for my sister Rachel's wedding. The amount exactly $60,000. The date just 1 hour after I had sent the wire. My hands went cold as the realization hit me in full force. My father hadn't been in trouble. There had been no federal prison hanging over his head. He had simply needed my money to cover his daughter's extravagant wedding deposit. knowing I was the only one with the funds ready and waiting. I stood there frozen, staring at the paper that proved my pain had been cashed in to fund someone else's vanity. Every frugal dinner, every penny I had saved for my own surgery, every moment of sacrifice had been weaponized. The daughter in me felt violated, exposed, drained, and yet amid the shock, something inside shifted. The auditor awoke. The part of me trained to calculate, analyze, and strategize surveyed the scene with cold precision. I cataloged the lie, the exact timing, the audacity of exploiting my trust. I realized then that to my family, I was not a person, not a daughter with a life of my own or needs of my own, but a resource and insurance policy to be tapped whenever convenience or vanity demanded it. The shock was sharp, but it didn't erupt in screams. Instead, it crystallized into focus, into observation, into preparation. Silence now meant calculation, not submission. The receipt, time-stamped and undeniable, had changed everything. I could feel the daughter's guilt and instinct to protect dissolve, replaced by the cold clarity of someone who understands leverage, evidence, and timing. The betrayal was complete, but so was the awakening. I would no longer be the safety net for a family that saw me as nothing more than a bank account. The auditor had taken control, and in that moment, every irrational, unquestioned act of generosity turned into data, a ledger of exploitation, ready to be addressed with precision. The betrayal didn't stop with the $60,000. Over the following weeks, my family's sense of entitlement became a daily intrusion. Rachel treated my apartment as if it were a boutique, stocked solely for her pleasure, wielding an emergency key like a VIP pass. I'd come home from grueling 10-hour audits to find blazers missing from my closet, my carefully curated skincare vanished from the bathroom counter, disappearing without a word. When I confronted her about a missing $300 serum, she didn't deny it. She just rolled her eyes and said, "Relax, Maya, sister, share. Besides, you just go to work and come home. Who are you trying to impress?" Her casual dismissal cut deeper than any theft. It wasn't just greed. It was the assumption that my things, my life, were naturally hers, because I was naturally less important. And my father and stepmother weren't far behind. One Sunday, they arrived not to ask how I was managing my pain without surgery, but to shove a catering contract in my face. "The caterer is being difficult about our credit check," my father said, waving the problem away as if it wasn't his own financial failure. "We just need you to co-sign as a guarantor. It's just a formality. We're family, right? We help each other." I looked at the papers and immediately recognized the trap. $15,000 of potential liability landing squarely on me if they defaulted. I almost laughed at the audacity. And then came the seating chart. I found it tucked casually on the dining table, my name not at the head table, or even near Rachel. I was at table 19, hidden in the back corner next to the swinging doors of the service kitchen and the DJ's speakers, seated with the photographer's assistant and some off-duty band members. I wasn't listed as the sister of the bride. I was listed as a background fixture, a person to be tucked away and overlooked, despite having funded the very event that would sideline me. That was the moment the last thread of daughterly guilt snapped. My parents' and sister's disregard was absolute, and I realized I wasn't just being taken for granted, I was being systematically used. The realization solidified my resolve. I would no longer be the passive enabler. I would no longer let my family's needs, greed, and entitlement dictate my life. This was the turning point where anger and strategy collided, where the auditor within me recognized the ledger of exploitation and decided it was time to take back control. The narrative had shifted. I wasn't saving them anymore. I was preparing to hold them accountable. After the shock of the seating chart and the realization of my family's relentless exploitation, something inside me shifted. The daughter who gave without hesitation was gone, replaced by the auditor who calculates, anticipates, and executes. I knew that confrontation or anger would only be twisted against me, used as fuel for their guilt-tripping and manipulation. I needed a strategy, something meticulous and precise. I called it the Trojan Horse Protocol. The idea was simple in principle, but complex in execution. Give them what they want, exactly as they expect, while positioning myself to secure the leverage I needed. The first step was handling the vendor contracts for Rachel's wedding. I approached it like an audit, reviewing every clause, confirming liabilities, and ensuring every agreement contained all necessary signatures and waivers. I volunteered to co-sign and manage the paperwork, presenting it as assistance and goodwill. My father, relieved to offload the burden, didn't suspect a thing. Next came securing the loan. Sandwiched in the middle of the contracts on page 42, I placed a document titled Deed in lieu of foreclosure attached to a commercial security agreement. The terms were simple but unyielding. The $60,000 I had previously sent used for the wedding deposit would be retroactively classified as a secured loan. The collateral, my father's house. If he missed the payment, which technically was already due, title transferred immediately to me. To ensure the validity of the documents, I hired a mobile notary, Dave, a colleague I trusted, who arrived just as my father began reviewing the stacks of paperwork. I guided him through the forms, keeping my tone light and helpful, reinforcing the illusion that this was just routine procedure. My father barely glanced at the notary or the specific pages. When he signed the contracts, liability waivers, catering guarantees, and ultimately the deed to his house, he thought he had manipulated me into compliance. In reality, he had handed me the weapon. Every pen stroke, every signature was a calculated step in my protocol. With the paperwork executed, the foundation of leverage was set. I now had full legal claim over the property, secured the previously exploited funds, and maintained the appearance of support. Nothing was left to chance. Every aspect, from the order of documents to the timing of the notary's presence, had been orchestrated to ensure the trap closed without warning. My father left oblivious, believing he had won yet again, while I quietly confirmed each signature, filing the notarized deed in my briefcase. This was the first phase complete. I had transformed their expectation of exploitation into a meticulously structured opportunity for reclamation. The audacity of this shift wasn't lost on me. For months, I had been treated as a resource. Now, every resource they thought they controlled had been flipped. I wasn't acting out of revenge exactly. I was enforcing accountability, leveraging the only language my family seemed to understand. Tangible, undeniable consequence. And as I sat back reviewing the final protocol in my mind, I knew this was only the beginning. Control had shifted, and from this point forward, every move would be calculated, precise, and irreversible. Phase 2 of my plan involved Rachel, and with Rachel, the key was never force. Greed did all the work for me. That evening, she stormed into my apartment, complaining about her hair, pacing around like the world had personally betrayed her. The salon had fried it, she said. It looked dull. She needed something expensive to fix it. I already knew what she was hunting for before she even opened the bathroom cabinet. On the counter sat a small jar of imported limited edition hair mask I'd bought months earlier. $200 for something I had been saving carefully. The only luxury she hadn't stolen yet. What she didn't know was that the real product was gone. I had emptied the jar and replaced it with a mixture of cheap leave-in conditioner and a concentrated UV reactive compound. Invisible under normal light, harmless, but under black light, it would glow like radioactive paint. I leaned against the doorway and did exactly what I knew would work best. I told her not to touch it. That was all the invitation she needed. Rachel snatched the jar instantly, rolling her eyes like I had insulted her. "Maya, you're sitting at the back table," she said, twisting the lid open. "No one's going to look at your hair. I'm the bride. I need this." She didn't check the texture, didn't question the slightly thinner consistency. If she had, maybe things would have gone differently. But greed moves fast and rarely checks the label. "Fine," I sighed, pretending defeat. "Just tell the stylist to apply it thoroughly. Every strand, that's how it really shines." She left with a jar clutched in her hand like a prize. The wedding day arrived under the kind of perfect sunshine that looks suspiciously expensive. The venue was a private island resort, white stone buildings, glass walls, water so blue it almost looked fake. Beautiful, yes, but more importantly, isolated. Guests had to take a 40-minute ferry ride to get there. No cell signal, only the resort's unreliable Wi-Fi. Once you arrived, you were stuck. Paradise with no exits. Perfect. Rachel looked flawless before the reception began. Silk dress, perfect makeup, and hair styled into sleek waves that shimmered under the ballroom lights. To everyone else, she looked like a magazine cover. To me, she looked like a chemical reaction waiting for the right trigger. I slipped quietly into the AV booth before the reception started. The technician barely glanced at the paperwork I showed him. I told him the bride had requested a special lighting cue during the dance portion of the night. A neon rave moment. Just a quick test under UV lights. He flipped the switch. The booth filled with purple glow. Perfect. Later, when the music dropped and the ballroom lights suddenly cut out, the room held its breath for just a second. Then the bass hit and the ultraviolet lights exploded across the dance floor. White shirts glowed violet. Teeth flashed purple. And right in the center of the room, Rachel's hair erupted into neon green and blazing orange, glowing so violently it looked radioactive. The chemical compound lit up every strand the stylist had carefully coated earlier that day. The color streaked down her neck, staining her expensive wedding gown. Gasps filled the room. Then, laughter. Rachel spun in confusion at first, smiling for cameras until she caught her reflection in a mirrored column. The scream that followed cut through the music like shattered glass. She clawed at her hair, smearing glowing streaks across her face, while phones rose all around the ballroom. The bride of the year stood in the center of the dance floor, glowing like a warning sign. The aftermath was a symphony of consequences, orchestrated with the precision I had cultivated for years. Once the wedding night chaos had unfolded, the resort staff, acting on my instructions, took control. They shut down the event, repossessed everything, and enforced all contractual obligations. Food bar rentals, everything was reclaimed. Rachel screamed that it was her wedding, but I calmly reminded her that it had been hers only until she defaulted. The humiliation had been immediate, public, and undeniable. Influencers and guests captured every moment on their phones, and social media erupted with the hashtag #glowingthiefbride. Within hours, sponsors withdrew contracts dissolved, and the sister who had treated my apartment as a free boutique found herself the subject of widespread ridicule. Meanwhile, my parents discovered that their eviction from the family home was imminent. Kenneth had signed the deed transferring the title to me as part of the secured loan agreement. The $60,000 loan, which had been retroactively classified and secured against the house, had matured the day before the wedding. They had 24 hours to vacate. All the legal documentation was flawless, notarized, and filed. I walked out of their house that morning with the weight of the notarized deed in my briefcase, leaving them scrambling in disbelief and anger, a chaos of reality colliding with their own entitlement. 2 days later, I sold the house to a developer, liquidating the asset I had reclaimed with strategic patience. The sale funded my long-postponed surgery, finally restoring the health and mobility that had been sidelined by years of self-imposed sacrifice and my family's exploitation. The relief was immense, but so was the satisfaction of reclaiming control in both personal and financial terms. With the proceeds secured and my own life finally stabilized, I launched an auditing firm specializing in asset recovery for victims of financial abuse. It was more than a business. It was a statement, a transformation of experience into empowerment. Every calculated step, every moment of patience, every interaction with my family that had once been draining and exploitative became data precedent and strategy for helping others navigate the same traps. I had turned the ledger of my own exploitation into a blueprint for advocacy and recovery. The glow of public exposure for Rachel faded slowly, but the lesson lingered. The social media storm had cemented the reality that actions have consequences, and no one could manipulate me again without repercussion. The house, the resort, the contracts, they were all markers of a precision plan executed flawlessly, a blend of legal savvy and psychological foresight. I wasn't acting out of revenge. I was enforcing accountability, transforming years of manipulation into structured, undeniable empowerment. For the first time in years, I could breathe free from pain, free from the financial and emotional chains that had been imposed on me. Every tool I had honed, calculation, patience, attention to detail, was now wielded in service of myself and others who had been exploited. My family had assumed I was their endless safety net, their unshakable foundation. They forgot one essential fact: sometimes the asset itself can be liquidated. And in that liquidation, I reclaimed not just what was owed, but my life, my health, and my power. Sometimes the people we trust most can see us not as individuals, but as resources to be used. This story is a reminder that boundaries, strategy, and patience are powerful tools against exploitation. Standing up for yourself doesn't have to be loud. It can be calculated, precise, and ultimately liberating. If this tale of reclaiming control and turning betrayal into empowerment resonated with you, consider showing your support. You can stay updated and witness more stories of resilience and strategy by subscribing and following.